Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Okay. So bear with us. We will be on in less than 5 minutes starting from now. And just wait around in the stream for a bit, and we will start in a little bit of less than 5 minutes. Okay? Thank you. All right, guys, a couple more minutes or a few, maybe like 1 minute or so, and we will be right back on it. Okay? Thank you for bearing with me. Like and subscribe. All right. We will start in the 10-minute mark. So 2 more minutes and we should be right on it. Okay, 1 more minute and we will start. All right. 20 seconds and we are on and live. Well, we are on and live, but yeah, we're going to start the show in exactly 10 seconds from now because, like I promised, I'm going to start it on towards the 10-minute mark just so I can make sure that I have the mic check working. All right. So we are live and popping. So now we are on the verge of a post-fight review with Cyril Gane taking on Spivak. And then you had Chris Eubank taking on in a rematch against Liam Smith. So, what are the two overall themes that you can learn from this fight? One of the things that you can learn from these two fights is the adjustment of what you did wrong in your previous matches and how you're going to rectify it in your upcoming match or your redeemable match. Because, as you know, Cyril Gane was finished in the first round by none other than John Jones. And in what way was he finished? He was finished in a way where he got out wrestled. But in this fight, he showed that he was able to stuff the takedowns and not only stuff the takedowns, but get Spivak on his back in the same similar fashion that John Jones did to him, which improved his wrestling, improved his clinch game, but also did what he always knew how to do, which was strike from range, hit him with some jabs, hit him with some simple shots, leg kicks, and move around with the solid footwork that he has as a heavyweight in a very Tyson Fury-esque fashion in a way that he moves around the cage. So there was some adjustments that he was able to make there. Now, how about Chris Eubank? The type of adjustments that he made with the new trainer, none other than Bomac, who is the head trainer of Terrence Crawford, and by the way, a very good family friend of none other than Terrence Crawford. This guy grew up with Terrence Crawford's father when I believe him and Terrence Crawford's father was training together. And at the time when he stopped boxing, he started training Terrence Crawford. And lo and behold, here we are. We're now in this position where he's his longtime trainer. He's sort of a father figure to Terrence Crawford. And now he's become a very formidable coach in the world of boxing, where you have people with the likes of Chris Eubanks asking for his services. Whereas before, you take a look at the fat shaming that he had received because of the fact that, let's just face it, right? He's not exactly the most well toned trainer out there. In other words, he doesn't look like Derek James. You look at Derek James, the guy looks like a fighter. Yes, we know him as a trainer, but he's shaped like a fighter. He's lean. He's got cuts in his muscles. He's fit. He can probably work out with the boxers as well, with the boxers that he works with the likes of the Charlo twins and Anthony Joshua. and all those guys. He can train with those guys. He's in that type of shape. But I always wondered, is it really that important for a trainer to be in shape? Don Ingle is another guy that comes to mind. The trainer of none other than Nas, Prince Nas. Then you had Kell Brook, and then Tyann Booth, Tommy Jacobs, and then you had Tommy. I'm sorry, uh, Billy Joe Saunders, the Galahad brothers. So a whole list of names of people, but and then a very credible trainer with a world championship caliber of fighters that he's trained from the very beginning. So you look at him, he's buff, he's got this uh big arms, he looks like the Rock, right? So he looks like somebody that you could trust as a trainer. Ben Davison, the same thing, not a bad shape of a guy. But then you look at Bomac, not exactly a specimen of a trainer. But then you got to ask yourself, do you really need to look like a specimen to be a trainer? And the answer is, all you really need to be a trainer is to have the right brains, have the right strategy that you're going to implement for your fighter. So, because of that, Bomac is in a position where he's now one of the best trainers in boxing. And how could you deny him? First of all, Terrence Crawford, what he did for his entire life and his entire career is undeniable now that he has fought Spence and has done it in such a dominating fashion. So you can't deny Bomac of that. So let's get it down a notch a little bit. Let's work on Chris Eubank. Not exactly a world championship fighter yet somewhat of a very popular fighter in these big marquee matchups. He's not invincible like Terrence Crawford. So now we can really test out what kind of trainer you are, because it's easy to take on a talent like Terrence Crawford, a guy who is genetically gifted, a guy who has boxing in his blood, who's grown up fighting with the likes of his mother paying the neighborhood kids to go out and fight him, right? So this is a natural born fighter and a natural born athlete. So of course he's going to be a world champion. And it's very easy to take credit for that. Well, now you got a challenge ahead of you. How about you take on Chris Eubank as your fighter, training him to take on a guy that knocked him out last time in not even the middle of the rounds, maybe somewhere in the fourth round, he was able to finish him. So you got to think, what kind of challenge are you going to deal with Chris Eubank in comparison to an already talented Terrence Crawford? Well, tonight, the results absolutely spoke for themselves. And how so? Well, let's face it, he was able to finish him in the 10th round. Okay. Yes, it wasn't the way that Liam Smith had finished him previously. He finished him in the fourth round or something like that in the first fight. So now he was able to do it in a later fashion, a little bit longer, very similar to how Anthony Joshua took it a while to finish Hellenius, right? So it's kind of like that, but you got to think he had to do it in a very methodical fashion. He couldn't just go out there and swing for the fences in reckless abandonment the way that he tried to with Liam Smith in the first try, right? So now he knew that he had to adjust. He had to make changes, just like Cyril Gane tonight. He had to make a lot of changes because of the fact that he knew he had some wrestling deficiencies. Now, sure, Spivak is not John Jones by any stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't mean that horrible traumatic experience that you had with John Jones, it doesn't mean that you can't use that to propel you into this next fight with, let's say, a lesser of a competition. And lo and behold, because of the fact that you were scared of being taken down and being choked out and dominated again, you made sure that that was never going to happen because you did it with the best of them. Well, now you're fighting a guy who's not John Jones. So how great can you look? Now, look, this is the way that I predicted the fight. I want you guys to take a look at the video. By the way, I'm going to drop on the comment section the video that I made yesterday that I just dropped right now. It's called Why Boxing Needs MMA and Why MMA Needs Boxing. And the reason why I made that particular video was because I wanted to show people a little bit of my knowledge of history of both sports, not only of my knowledge of both sports, but also the significance of why these two particular arts in the modern day each other, right? Why do they need each other, and what is the sole purpose of their existence and their partnership, and how they benefit from each other? So once again, this is one of those nights where you had both boxing and MMA playing in the same night. Let me see. Let me drop this on the comment section right here. So if you guys want to take a look, this is the link that I have. I don't think you can hit the link on it, but if you want to copy it and watch it, yeah, it's on my video section. It's the latest video that I have titled "Why Boxing Needs MMA and Why MMA Needs Boxing." Because I've mentioned in the previous videos that this is the best era in combat sports so far. Right now, we come to find out why boxing and MMA need each other and vice versa. So a part of that is because there's a cross promotional value that is happening in the world of combat sports right now. And in particular, you sort of can give that contribution to the likes of Logan Paul or Jake Paul in ways that they were able to merge these two worlds together. Now, imagine these two guys, Jake Paul and Logan Paul, they grew up watching combat sports, big fans of it, while they were on the side making their YouTube career and their Disney acting career and whatever it is that they were doing on the side before they were even involved with combat sports. They were just guys looking on the outside. They've watched the boxing, they've watched the MMA, just like what I've mentioned in the video where I used to watch the David Haye British boxing era, which coincided in the same era of George St. Pierre. But yet those two worlds never merged together up until you had, let's say, Roy Jones Jr. when he started becoming interested in, let's say, boxing Anderson Silva. And then it evolved into Mayweather being able to take on Mac, which just really catapulted the idea of celebrity boxing, influencer boxing, and the mixture of mixed martial arts guys going into boxing. And now to the point where you have mixed martial artists boxing each other rather than fighting each other in a cage. So all these different elements and these different contrasting aspects that you never would have seen in the world of combat sports is happening today. So I thought it was worth mentioning that. And if you guys want to check out my full details on what I have to say about that particular topic, I just gave you a little bit of preview of that. I suggest you guys take a look at that video. But nonetheless, going back to Chris Eubank, I think that a lot of people really look down on people that go out and change trainers. And this is something that I think really needs to be addressed in the world of combat sports. For example, you have Leon Edwards. He mentions something to the effect where he doesn't want to move to America or come to America to train, even though he has done a few rounds in the AKA gym out here in Northern California with the likes of Khabib and Islam. And they've even had stories where he had sparred with Islam and Khabib and DC and all those guys in that particular part of the world. But then he has this mentality that's very similar to McGregor. And if you notice, McGregor as an Irish fighter is very different to the likes of Ian Gary or in the past Joe Duffy, who, by the way, has a win over Conor McGregor in the regional scene out of all places. Joe Duffy has trained with the likes of Faraz Zahabi, one of the best guys in the world, maybe even trained with John Winkle and Greg Jackson's down in New Mexico. And then you had Ian Gary. He was trained with the likes of those killers in Florida, the Black Zillions, the team with Chandler and Henry Hooft and Shufcott and all these guys and Gilbert Burns. So he's got a well-rounded arsenal of training partners to work with. Unlike Conor McGregor and unlike Leon Edwards, who have shown in the past and in the present in ways that it was either successful or detrimental to their reality of what is going on in their fight career. Now, obviously, with Conor McGregor, he was able to go on to become the double champion, and you can make of that as you will. And then later on, lost it because of these uh, high profile matches that he has with Khabib, the two straight losses that he had with Dustin Poirier, and now here he is trying to bounce back going into a fight with none other than Michael Chandler. Supposedly, that is supposed to happen in December. So, Leon Edwards, on the other hand, he was able to finish off Usman in their rematch, and in their trilogy, which was the rematch for the world title, he was able to defeat him by decision. And he did all this without a fancy American training facility in the likes that Kamaru Usman trains at, or Ian Gary, or all these other guys that I had just mentioned. But it begs the question, right? Is it really important to change trainers? Sometimes it's good to have a different look. For example, you've been at a job for a certain amount of years, it's becoming a little bit stale. You don't really get along that much anymore with the coworkers that you have. There's a shift in the culture of the work environment, and maybe there's a new boss. Maybe you don't like the new boss, or maybe you've had the same boss and you just don't like how he operates now. So now it's time for a change. So it's not really that bad to go out there and try to find new trainers, find new environments. Look at what Anthony Joshua did. He was able to do that. A lot of people are giving him criticism because of the fact that Rob McCracken had taken him to the world championships, and that now he's decided to drop him and let go of him. Here's another example of that: Jake Paul. He lost against Tommy Fury. And by the way, no shame at all whatsoever, right? But you got to think, he's been working with BJ Flores. He was able to help him get all these knockouts and help him become a professional boxer, in a sense where he's now knocking out formidable combat athletes, of which you can't deny from Jake Paul. So now you got to think to yourself, what's wrong? What's wrong with BJ Flores? Why do you have to let him go after a win, after a loss against Tommy Fury, which isn't really that bad of a loss if you look at it in hindsight in the future? Because you can probably see Tommy Fury, if he does get past KSI in the next coming month in October, you can say that, yes, Tommy would probably graduate from the influencer boxing class, the white collar boxing class, and into international and world level class of boxing, perhaps. Right. And in hindsight, you could say that because you can see how great Tommy is, how good he is. He's got long arms for his height, 84 inches of reach. He has the same reach as John Jones, and he's only 6 feet tall. So that's a very dangerous boxer to deal with, and a boxer that can really beat anybody at any time just based on those attributes alone. So why did Jake Paul do what he did? Well, because he felt that he needed to level up a little bit. Is BJ Flores a good trainer? Absolutely. So let's say if you're a beginner right now, you're one of these influencer boxers. Let's say you're Fauzi Tube, or Deji, or Austin McBroom, or all these other guys that are in the influencer boxing scene. Okay. Maybe you can go and use BJ Flores and he'll make you better. The problem is, at a certain point, you graduate, you upgrade, you get a better job, you get a better degree. You go from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree. You go from a master's degree to a PhD. Now you're a doctor. Now you have different options. You have different responsibilities. You have different leadership roles that you can fulfill. You're able to be offered a lot more money than you were offered previously because of this particular graduation of levels that you've achieved. So now it's time to make that new change. It's time to make that and find a new trainer. And perhaps this is one of the things that Chris Eubank was thinking in his mind. The fact that, you know what, it's been great training with my dad for all these years, but maybe I need a new change. And sometimes here's something that a lot of sports fathers don't really understand. And when I mean sports fathers, you know, those guys that are heavily involved with their kids' sports life. And by the way, this is great. This is positive. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this. However, there is the overbearing effect that you can lay on your child who is an athlete that you may overdo, and you may not realize that you're doing that. Like, for example, you make your kid a whole lot more nervous than you should have if you would just, let's say, let the coach do his thing, right? Sometimes it's important for fathers to let the other coach do his thing. Look at Javier Mendez and Abdul Manap Nurmagomedov. Abdul Manap Nurmagomedov knew that he wasn't able to come to California because he had visa issues. But lo and behold, he gave the title of head trainer to none other than Javier Mendez. He says, "You are the boss. You are the head emir of this fight team." And when they went to Abu Dhabi in the same neutral ground where Abdul Manap was able to perform his task as the head trainer of the entire team, guess what? Javier Mendez played his role as the assistant coach and let Coach Abdul Manap do his thing, allowing him to give orders to these guys and give this architecture of chain of commands that is needed in a fight team. And that's oftentimes something a lot of guys are missing in the fight world, is that they often forget about the rankings of their trainer. Because you as a fighter, you got to understand, you are going to be the star. You are the one that is going to have all the attention. You're the one that's going to do all the media rounds. You're the one that's going to do all the interviews. And when you win, you're the one that obtains all the glory for the world to see. But on the other side of that, there's also a mutual understanding that your corners are a big help to you. But some have different cultures of their camp than others. For example, McGregor in his camp, you know, he runs the show. There is nothing that John Kavanaugh could tell him because of the fact that he gets paid way too much. And for him to, let's say, hurt Connor's ego in any kind of way would be detrimental to his financial gains, or maybe not. But obviously, when it compares to the other fighters in SBG Ireland, I'm sure that John Kavanaugh and Owen Roddy get paid the most when they are working a Conor McGregor fight week, as opposed to, let's say, a James Gallagher or a Peter Queally fight week. And that's a fact. There's no disputing that. Nonetheless, that is the reason why it's hard to be the general of that team when you are the head trainer. Now, you look at City Kickboxing, the most successful fight team in the world right now when it comes to MMA, kickboxing, and everything in between. You have Israel Adesanya as the two-time 185 undisputed champion, and you have Volkanovski, who's a long-time 145 champion, who's challenged for the 155 championship and gave Islam the hardest fight of his life in comparison to any other 155er out there. So that is the type of camp that you're dealing with City Kickboxing. Now, what is their success? Their success is that Eugene Berman, no matter how much of a superstar Israel Adesanya or Volkanovski are, Eugene Berman is the head general of that military. There is no breaking chain of commands. When you're in fight week, he's in charge. He tells you where to go. He tells you how to go to your hotel room, how to cut weight. And by the way, during the pandemic, when they had to be in a bubble, he told all his guys to go when and where so that they don't break bubble procedures when they're doing, let's say, quarantine during, a Vegas fight week of some sort. That's Eugene Berman in a nutshell. He was running those guys in that particular matter. He was the general, even though these are some of the biggest stars in the world that are in his camp. And even Israel Adesanya mentions that when he's visited other camps. He's like, wow, you guys talk to your coaches like that? But again, different cultures call for different fighters in different gyms. For example, maybe Anthony Joshua needs the likes of Derek James as his particular trainer. Why? Well, I think when Anthony Joshua was training with Rob McCracken and maybe even Robert Garcia for a short period of time, I think there was a focus on a certain individual in the camp, which is none other than Anthony Joshua. Rob McCracken focused 100% on Anthony Joshua and his camp and everything else, and that was that. The same thing with Robert Garcia. He focused on Anthony Joshua. And then he even mentioned something to the effect, well, I'm not really trying to be your friend. I'm just trying to be your trainer. So make of that as you will. maybe that was the type of thing that Anthony Joshua just didn't feel comfortable in. It just was not the type of culture that he felt like that was going to take him to the next level. Well, now fast forward to Derek James. It seems that Derek James is the type of trainer that is giving Anthony Joshua a certain structure. Because let's face it, whenever Anthony Joshua trains out in England, I would believe that it would be very difficult for him to move around during training camps, having a lot of people hound him while he's going from store to store in between training. Let's say he wants to go to the sauna or go to cryotherapy or go see a physical therapist to get some joints ready, or help him get a massage or something like that, or any of these recovery effects, or just going out to buy food or going out to restaurants. It would be a hassle for Anthony Joshua to live in London because he's such a big superstar over there. Now, in Texas, I got to tell you, it's a gift and a curse, because it's a gift in a boxing sense, but a curse in a promotional sense. Not a lot of people know who Anthony Joshua is over there. So there could be some problematic elements with that in terms of promotion, but at the same time, it's really good in hounding him down to just focusing on boxing and nothing else. So those are one of the things that you got to take into consideration when he's training out in Texas. Nobody knows him. People probably think Anthony Joshua is some NCAA football player until you hear his accent. You start thinking, oh, where are you from? Oh, you're from England. Oh, this and that. Oh, you're a boxer. Oh, yeah, you're that English boxer guy. But to be honest with you, not a lot of people really know Anthony Joshua in the American sports market, and that's good, especially in Texas, where it's all about the Dallas Cowboys, it's all about the Dallas Stars, it's all about the Dallas Mavericks, and whoever else is a big sporting entity down there. Houston, Texas, Houston Rockets, Houston Astros, you name it. Anthony Joshua is not a bigger star than any of those guys that play for those teams. And that's a good thing for him, because he is just now another individual. Now, for some people, it's probably better for them to be focused as the main individual. Colby Covington, in his camp with MMA Masters after he had moved out of American Top Team, felt that that was one of the choices that he had made for his career, individual focus, which, by the way, is something that is very prominent in the boxing community and how they train their fighters. Very individualistic setting. We're going to just train and focus on this guy. Whereas in in most MMA circles, Team Alpha Male, aka Team Faraz Zahabi, Greg Jackson, all these guys, it's a very team effort type of environment. Duke Rufus, that's another team that you could say that is like that. But with MMA Masters, they are specifically focused on Colby Covington. And there's a lot of boxers that work just like that. Floyd Mayweather works like that. He's always been an individual set type of boxer in his training camp. Nobody is focused on anybody but him. Everybody is focused 100% on what he does, even to the point where people open up his Pepsi bottle for his little recovery that he does after his workouts. That's just the reality of these things for some people. And sometimes it works for some, and sometimes it doesn't work for others. But nonetheless, you got to know what works for you. And in this particular case, Cyril Gane seems to feel that working with Fernand Lopez still worked out for him. They just needed to create a little bit more adjustments. And you could probably say that about Jake Paul and BJ Flores. Maybe they just need a little bit of adjustment. I mean, you can't really judge off of a fight where you're taking on a guy that has an 84-inch reach at 6 feet tall. Right? That has to be a unique situation that you just are not going to face with the likes of Nate Diaz. But nonetheless, he felt like he needed to change a trainer anyway. And Cyril Gane felt like he didn't need to. Chris Eubank tonight felt like he needed to, and that was that. And by the way, how about the co-main event with Adam Azim and that Ukrainian Armenian guy that he had fought? A lot of people were giving flack towards Adam Azim, towards that performance, because the problem is when you're a knockout artist, they often expect you to finish all your fights in that similar fashion. Now, they all can't be Arthur Beterbiev. They all can't be Deontay Wilder, even though Deontay Wilder has had a few decision wins and losses that he had taken in his career and in his amateur career and whatnot. But nonetheless, he's a knockout guy, and he always, most of the time, finishes fights in that similar fashion. And when you're constantly doing that, it's almost like you expect it. So I think they're kind of giving the kid a little too much of a hard time. And then he's very young on top of that. The kid is barely like 22, 23 years old or something like that. So he's got a lot to learn in that particular field. And then you had David Allen taking on Clark, getting finished in the 6th round. I mean, that's just what you get, right? I mean, look, David Allen is one of those fighters where he goes all out and he just rolls the dice, but sometimes it just doesn't roll his way. Now, how about in the co-main event with the UFC tonight? You had Rose Namajunas taking on Manon Ferrot. So what is significant about this particular fight right here with Manon and Rose? So you had a striking percentage on Rose that was way higher on Rose's part. You're talking about 39% strikes on Rose and 26% on Manon Ferrot. Now, why did they give this fight to Manon Ferrot? We don't know. Could it be because of the fact that she was able to stuff 5 to 6 takedowns? And then you got to think, okay, well, Rose had the majority of the strikes, or did she? She had a higher volume in some instances, or not. Okay, but nonetheless, this is why sometimes you can't leave it in the hands of the judges, right? Because you leave it in the hands of the judges, this is just what's going to happen. How about one of the most exciting fight of the night right here with Benoit Saint Denis taking on Thiago Moises? Now, what's interesting about this fight? I mean, look, we know that Benoit Saint Denis is a very tough guy. He's taken a lot of damage in his fight career. He just seems to be one of those very exciting fighters, almost like a Justin Gaethje type of fighter. And I think you kind of get that from his special forces background, where he will just go all out and fight to the death. But the thing is, sometimes you got to understand that this is a sport and this is not war. And then sometimes even in war, you got to fight very strategic, right? You know, you have to find covers. You got to duck. You got to be able to crawl. You got to be able to have the right strategy. You got to be able to have the right shooting positions to get you to the right leverage in the battlefield. But he can do that in this particular setting. He did get 5 takedowns out of 9, which does help, you know, grind out your opponent. And if it went to a decision, it would have gone his way. But nonetheless, he just went for the finish and was able to take out Thiago Moises in the 2nd round because of that. And then Volkan Oezdemir. How about Volkan Oezdemir showing off a little bit of his boxing skills right now? This is the UFC debut of Bogdan Gusov. You have 1 takedown from Volkan Oezdemir. Surprisingly enough, Bogdan didn't want to try any takedowns, and I don't know why that is. Maybe he was just a little bit reluctant on maybe taking an uppercut from Volkan Oezdemir, but nonetheless, the hooks, the straight punches that Volkan Oezdemir laid on showed that he still had those hands of steel that he showed earlier in his career that fast-tracked him to an early title shot against Daniel Cormier back in 2017. Now here he is with the win tonight. Now, how about this? This was basically, for all the boxing guys out there, I want you guys to understand what this particular fight was with Gomez and Yanez. This was literally the MMA version of Usyk versus Daniel Dubois, but in an alternative universe. And why do I say that? Well, for one, William Gomez gets a body kick on Yanez. And Yanez pauses for a minute, signals to the referee, says to the referee, hey, ref, I'm messed up. I think there was a foul. So he was basically trying to do what Usyk was trying to do, only for him to get stopped by the referee. The referee was like, okay, well, you can't continue. So it was a legitimate body kick, a body shot, right? And it was right in between the line. And again, these things, when it comes to low blows, it's very subjective. And whoever the referee is at that time, you just better hope that the referee is going to favor you in that particular setting when it comes down to it. And this is just one of those situations. Controversial nonetheless. This is one of those things that a lot of the MMA podcasters around the world are going to talk about. You're going to hear about it from Brendan Schaub. You're going to hear about it from MMA Guru. You're going to hear about it from Weasel. You're going to hear about it from Rigo. You're going to hear about it from the people that break down the fights in a way that fights are meant to be broken down, which is talking about the kicks and punches of it all. Obviously, I'm doing that right now, but you guys know that I also do the storylines and the news and the gossip and the political aspects of the fight game as well. But it's always good to measure the kicks and punches because, after all, this is what the game is about and what we're here for. Morgan Charest gets a first-round knockout. Very impressive debut, a guy to look out for in the future. And then the prelims earlier of the night, Taylor Lapalus gets a decision over Coquelin Loughran, Irish fighter. So while Cowlin was walking out, he was getting booed by the French crowd. I mean, what do you expect, right? You got an Irish fighter here, 2 out of 11 takedown attempts that he attempted in here. But Taylor Lapalus was just way more accurate with the strikes, and because of that, the judges gave him the decision on that, even though Coughlin was able to get 2 takedowns. And I've mentioned before, if you're one of these old school guys like I was, where you watch the rise of George St. Pierre's championship run back in the days, you've seen how easy it was for the guys that were getting all the takedowns to win the fights, the John Fitches of the world, the George St. Pierre's. No more in this particular era. It's like as if the judges are going off of damage, or depending on what jurisdiction or sanctioning body you're fighting under, it seems that some judges seem to favor certain styles over another. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, tonight you are in France, so you got to think to yourself, okay, being in France, it's a Muay Thai country, okay? And by the way, one of the best Muay Thai countries in the world because of the fact that they used to colonize Thailand, but that's another story for another podcast. But nonetheless, it's a Muay Thai country, and they gave it to the guy that had the better strikes in comparison to Cowlin, who actually got 2 takedowns out of the entire exchange. But nonetheless, congratulations to Taylor Lapalus for being able to get that win. This is a guy that has been in and out of the UFC, came back, and now he's fighting with them again and showing another run to his UFC career. Angelusa taking on Rhys McKee. Now, for you guys that don't know, Rhys McKee came into the UFC as a debut, taking on Khamzat Chimaev. Obviously, he got beat, and a great story on him. Then he goes back to Cage Warriors, gets a few knockouts, and then comes back to the UFC and does this particular fight with Angelusa. Now, very controversial because there are people that have had that thought that Rhys McKee did really good in the final round. He was able to elbow him a few times, rock him a few times. But again, it's just one of those moral victory situations like Nate Diaz in what he did with, let's say, Leon Edwards and what he did in his boxing match with Jake Paul. It's just one of those situations where, okay, you had the moral victory in being able to last all 3 rounds and then get a few positions where you were able to rock Angelosa in that. And that was it. And then you had a great run in the Cage Warriors. And then the UFC brought you back in a European card. I'm sure they're going to bring him back to give him a lesser competition and give him another chance one more time. Obviously, he is a former Cage Warriors champion, from what I understand. Now, for those that can correct me on that, please correct me on that in the chat if you want. But yeah, that's Rhys McKee in a nutshell. So yeah, big ups to Angelusa for that win, and then Nora Cornella gets a decision win over Jocelyn Edwards. Basically, just a situation where the person that got the most takedowns again is not the one that won the fight. Jocelyn Edwards got 5 out of 8 takedowns, no takedowns for Nora. Their striking percentage is almost very similar, maybe just a slight of a difference with the significant strikes for Nora, and maybe that's what won her the fight. But nonetheless, congratulations on Nora for that particular decision win that she was gifted, in my opinion, obviously, because 5 takedowns out of nothing. I mean, that's controversial in and of itself. And then Fareed Basharat, the former Dana White Contender Series, the guy who took on an Israeli guy for calling him the T word, terrorist. Yeah, but nonetheless, he was able to beat him. He got known for that, and now he's fighting in these European cards. Gets a first-round submission over Clayton Rodriguez. And then Zara Farim dos Santos taking on Jacqueline Calvacante, opening the night with a decision win on that one. 57% total striking percentage as opposed to 15. I mean, Zara threw 259 punches and kicks in this particular fight, only to land 39 out of them. And obviously, the striking percentage for Jacqueline is what won her that fight. No takedowns for both ladies. And that right there is the entire fight night for the September 2nd, 2023 fight night for Chris Eubank Jr. rematching Liam Smith, finally avenging his loss and reviving his career, possibly now getting a title shot against Triple G. And now you have Cyril Gane back in the winning column after that heavy loss that he took against John Jones and putting himself back in the mix of the heavyweight division. And a great Saturday night of fighting. And you know what? It's not even 7 p.m. yet here in the West Coast, right? This is what's great about European cards, right? I wish they would have European cards every Saturday, but that's not how it is. A lot of these fights are going to be prime time for Vegas and New York, but nonetheless, what a great night of fights, and I enjoyed every single one of them, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and all the best to you guys. From here on, I am signing out, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday and weekend, and we will see you soon once again. And by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also watch my latest video and this live stream, and a new video that I had, why boxing needs MMA and why MMA needs boxing. And you can title that one way or another. But thank you once again for listening. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you again soon, and enjoy the fights.